Hey, I'm Charles Cicirella. Oh, that was a smile almost. And this reading is for Jax. Harold and the Purple Crayon. Mama's in the kitchen counting while I'm sleeping on the floor because me and the daylight haven't gotten along since 9/11. She comes out of the fog of social media, a place I more often than not avoid like the plague, because too many people are idiots. There's something about her that has woken a part of my hibernating self that I swore I would never bring to the surface again. We must lower our guards if we ever dare to pass go and collect $200. Problem is, every day there's a million new reasons to get into our hazmat suits, board up the windows, and never come out of our dens. Encased in a cozy blanket of being and nothingness, the hurt you're experiencing cuts through any nausea, left dripping from the dagger plunged into your immortal sadness. I've always been a poet, a Jew, and a Sicilian. Even before my parents saw my cousin Lori and planned on having a baby. No one's quite hearing the tolling bells of COVID-19. Perhaps because staring into the abyss of our own mortality is too heavy a lift and threatens to break us into a million pieces. My essence spied your essence from across the internet, and before I knew what was happening, we were both enlightened by the swift action of God, imploring us to never stop believing in miracles. Jax Lethal. Under cover of night, his day passes over us like a funeral shroud. I watch you from an expanse of perpetual sorrow, and I'm reminded that recognizing beauty still ticks in the bones of this old dog. You tell me my poetry honors you, when truth be told, I'm so grateful to share my gifts with a muse of your hallowed stature. I know you're paying attention, and that wakes me up more than any Mickey Mouse alarm clock ever could. Listening to the music between the droplets of rain on the sleeve of your summer gown, I desire to see you beneath the moonlight on the open prairie. I've tried slowing down for my friends and loved ones, but I still discover myself alone, because an artist's sacrifice is never done. Moral superiority is for the circus clowns miming for laughs under a big top of mediocrity and methadone addiction. I won't deny I'm a hologram of my former self. And still, I pursue my appetites like a bulimic looking forward to their next big blowout. We're all accounting for time in some fashion or another that we believe is unique to our past, present, or future situations. I'm not one for the beach, but I cannot stand the grains of sand. Let me try that again. I'm not one for the beach, because I cannot stand the grains of sand getting stuck between my toes and in the crack of my bum. You help me widen the search of my soul as I pretend I'm Odysseus, because as wandering heroes go, I believe it's best to go back to the source and fight the temptation to buy the Cliff Notes. I'm getting sleepy, but I won't rest until this poem is finished and the episode of NYPD Blue I'm watching is over. Now I'm watching Hill Street Blues. You're a lasting reminder of just how much of an impression a person can make on another person, even and especially when the world is burning all around us. We all burn out. Hi, Mimo. How are you? Hi. We all burn out from time to time, and yet too few take notice and do anything about it. I was rowing in a boat that caught fire, and because I don't swim, I stayed in the boat and I burned to a crisp, like Richard did when he lit that crack pipe instead of putting it down and saving his life. I like ringing her bell in the middle of the night, when only the gargoyles atop skyscrapers protect us from ourselves. I listen to her songs, and I know what is meant by the rapture, as I take Holy Communion from the grooves she lays down. When we heard the fireworks, we all dived to the floor because a thief was invading our sacred space with sonic booms and sanctuary bells. The priests would have nothing to do with us on the Vegas Strip, and that's okay, because I know what they've been up to and how many of their thoughts are impure. We all burn out. We all burn ourselves down every now and again because it's easier than admitting to ourselves we don't have all the answers, and spiraling out of control may just be what the doctor ordered. Jax's eyes continue catching me off guard with the way they look into my soul and assure me everything is going to be all right. I like talking to her because she makes me feel safe. And as strangers go, I know we are connected. Let's try that again. I like talking to her because she makes me feel safe. And as strangers go, I know we were connected in other lives, and that reincarnation is one more rung on the ladder to enlightenment. Jack's muse, waiting at the door of my mind for another poem to advance like Sherman's March to the Sea. Something there is about you that strikes a match in me. That's what Bob wrote. While for me, it's more like a light at the end of a tunnel that I never believed I would see. I'm a fool when it comes to people, because even though I've always known what to say in my poetry, it's never been the case face to face, as I oftentimes ruin a good thing by being too pushy or too dependent on conspiracies of illogic. Jack's muse, a silver lining, crashing through the pounding cranial waves by presenting a new direction through the thundering of paranoia and the lightning of anxiety, constantly purging my soul. There's a right and there's a wrong way, and then there's my way, which guarantees failure because not many people can handle a lava monster artist. Celerity Bites, that's Jax's podcast. You got to check it out. Celerity Bites. There's a right and a wrong way. And then there's my way, which guarantees failure because not many people can handle a lava monster artist, as I impede any strengthening bonds by asking too many fireproof questions. I watched her as the fears and tears began falling, and I knew someone was going to lose a finger or an eye, as two chameleons on a mirror have a conversation in poem form. I borrowed some of that last line from Jax because her words stoke my inner lion. I don't believe Jax quite gets just how much power she possesses, as her genuine, gentle nature supersedes all the bullshit too many egomaniacs pass off as art. I haven't tuned into anyone's wavelength like this in a long time, because all the radio stations have been co-opted by rope-a-dope salesmen, hell-bent on breaking our spirits by brick-walling the music and throwing it into our ears like poisoned darts. Marching orders for Jax. These are all for Jax. That's why the reading is for Jax. Hanging on the chandelier like a chimpanzee, high on potassium and freedom that comes from living a life outside the norm. We twist in the wind when we're not careful, and we step on a crack or allow a black cat to cross our undesignated path. Jax gets it, because she's been pulling out all the stops since before even she was a bambina. And the Silk Road unraveled before her like Guthrie's ribbon highway. I plugged in because tuning out was never an option. Plus, I've never been good at doing what I was told when it hardly made sense, and I felt the need to stretch out my artistic prowess. I've learned you must start I want to just make sure I'm still taping. Sorry about that. I've learned you must just start creating. Be it words on a page, paint on a canvas, music in a studio, of your own mind. Because without art, there is no oxygen, and without oxygen, there is no life. She sent me a picture of her daughter, and so many feelings welled up inside my chimney body, I just about blew a gasket and had to go to the toy maker to recalibrate. My taproot zymology. Frozen in crustacean time, I had to crack open my own shell before I could finally feel my toes and go about the good work of lending a hand and reinventing the wheel. They aren't exactly marching orders, but are instead purple fingerprints and make us weightless, like the gravitational pull of Shatner's method reacting. Every night we watch an original episode of Star Trek because something about it reminds me of when I was a child. And hunger was just another word for go tell it on the mountain. Jax never picks up her toys and goes home. Because what would even be the point when we need more play dates in a world of broken down hearts and their inability to pump blood back into the Temple Mount? People reject my poetry as just endless clutter. And to those dead souls, I say, shame on you for pretending that you're in touch and when nothing could be further from the truth. Swinging through the trees like a great ape, completely comfortable with their lot in life, because this great ape knows we can always escape the box we're in once we accept this jungle is of our own devising and it can be rectified once we stop being afraid of the reckoning that is to come. It can be rectified once we stop being afraid of the reckoning that is to come. Your mom is an ancestor now, as we all will be one day, quote unquote. Reading these words of Jax's soothes me and calms me down. It's like I've walked through the flames and I reach the other side, where tyranny is dead, and we can finally live at peace with the flowers and the beasts. I need to channel William Blake because I believe he's the only one who will understand how alone I feel at times as I study metaphysics and turn my back on harmful people. My mom and I always shared this special bond. As I typed those words, it got me thinking about a frog named Dingledoon that my mother would tell me stories about when I was a little kid and she was potty training me. She even talked in this strange voice as Dingledoon kept me company and made me feel like I had finally found a friend. When I went to UH to try and get her to agree to go back into a nursing facility, I walked up to her hospital bed and told her I was doing my best. And she said, "Charlie, I know." And that was the last time she seemed good. And I knew that she was saying goodbye. The heartless doctors told her the cancer had returned with not a single person in the room to hold her hand as she received this devastating news. I was just exiting the bus when she called and said, "You need to get here. Something is wrong." And I replied, "I'm around the corner and I'll be there soon." Why the United States of asinine doesn't respect human life, I'll never understand. As the bottom line replaces all decency. And the New York Stock Exchange opening and closing bells become the death knell we all cop to, like another designer drug that does nothing but drill us into false senses of security. Now, we're debating if school should reopen in the fall, which makes no sense whatsoever, as states continue to spike and we continue to disrespect the virus. I keep thinking about my mom having only one lung and how compromised she would have been if she were still alive. It's true, God works in mysterious ways, and yet we still must be responsible and stop passing the buck out of laziness and a level of apathy that I've never seen the likes of before. Sadly, we're not all in this together. We're not. Break my heart open like a melon. Every time I read that title, I think of Gallagher. Whack! Open hearts performing heart surgery on exhausted souls looking to recharge. The white page is nothing to fear, unlike the white man who rubs his white privilege in your face and expects you to thank him for his nasty populist politics. My family thinks I'm a scumbag, and that's okay, because they never once asked me about my art or made any effort whatsoever to understand where it is that I'm coming from. When Jax talks about La Bambina, my heart flutters like a butterfly, and I wish we could all share a meal together. Across the pond is a soul who operates outside logic because she's learned in past lives not recognizing one's gifts is no kind of life to attempt living. We strive to be our best selves if we know what's good for us. And at the stroke of midnight, I'll turn back into a pumpkin. Today, a supposed friend told me to get a haircut and to trim my beard because I look like a wild man. To which I replied, "What's wrong with looking wild? I'm just me, and you are just you. And together, maybe, we can be something. If we stop passing off counterfeit compliments like they actually meant something." I met a full-blown racist when I was standing in line at Giant Eagle yesterday, and I actually found it refreshing to hear someone speak their mind and not hide behind a cloak of false civility. Of course, I obviously didn't agree with anything she said, but as we stood there, like two masked gunslingers, I wondered how easy it would be to rob a bank, or at the very least, get this person to admit that the hatred she's feeling toward others is all going to be directed back to her sooner than later. The pandemic has turned our world upside down as companies make us jump through more hoops to get the same unsatisfying results. Even before the virus, it was next to impossible getting a business to answer their phone. And if I hear one more automated voice telling me, due to COVID-19, no one's available to take your call at this time, I may just scream at the top of my lungs and leave this country for the Scottish Highlands. Root beer float. I love, love, love root beer, quote unquote. In the shower, thinking about a root beer float. It's the perfect time to make a mess and have the time of your life. Jax's muse makes me sloppy drunk and incapable of operating heavy machinery. I need to pretend I'm driving through a school zone and take my foot off the gas pedal. Did you ever laugh so hard that root beer came out of your nose? Have you ever fallen in love with what you believed a furnace of love, and instead it turned out to be a swampland in Florida? We're born inside prophecy. I want to say that again. We're born inside prophecy. And no one here gets out alive until we own up to the sacred part we play in everything. No one here gets out alive until we own up to the sacred part we play in everything. Did you ever stop believing you're on a TV show and start acting for real? I must stop resisting the false hope that breeds fear and embrace everything about me that keeps my head above water. Well, I'm a-running down the road trying to loosen my load, listening to the eagles. My brave heart admires your brave heart and all the rainbow tragedy and simpleton madness that led you to this part in your story. When I was a child, I loved pop-up books and all the mysteries that they introduced to me. Then at 14, I discovered Dylan, and my creative life went into overdrive, and I haven't looked back since. The sun's not yellow. Sorry, it's chicken. Soft serve or hard ice cream? Jack says the quality has changed. Mimo, put your hand over your ears. To which I call bullshit. Everything is laid out before us, and it's for us to choose what we're willing to allow inside. Think of it as a vampire with less sharp teeth and not such a taste for blood. She closed down, which saddens me to no end, because I know my feelings for her have not changed and never will. It was incredible to watch the first time she read one of her poems, and how quickly afterwards she began her own podcast, Celerity Bites. Then something about writing 25,000 words and Jack slipped away, like inclement weather or a hand being let go of because the adult has forgotten how to be a child. I'm a living, breathing artist and never quite understood how other people who claim to also be artists, they get stuck in the webbing, and before you know it, their goose is cooked. Jax stepped back, and that is obviously her right to do so. But how about giving the other person a heads up? Because for me, when a muse shuts down, it's like hitting a concrete wall going 180 miles per hour. I like my ice cream to have dairy, even though I'm lactose intolerant, because I've discovered nothing replaces the real thing, and that goes thrice for dessert and everything nice. Let's stop telling ourselves lies and instead accept that all the drawings on the walls are from our hearts, and to erase anything would be a crime against our most passionate selves. Jack's airliner sweeps me along like a cosmic broom. I know age isn't important, and I still wonder. 20s, 30s, 40s, and of course ageless, as her ancient wisdom wraps me in a Moses blanket and secures my final fantasy. I know she has a significant other, and still I wonder of her day-to-day and how she can be so mortal and immortal at the same time. I felt like she was slipping away, so I said something, and instead of becoming defensive, she placed her foot back on the gas to make sure I knew she's not going anywhere, and that this connection means as much to her as it does to me. It's been decades since I've held someone's hand, or took it upon myself to make sure we get across the busy street safe and sound. She's a mommy, and I'm the old man of the mountain, with no dependents, which isn't entirely true because I believe everyone relies upon someone, and as gladiators go, I've always been ready and more than willing to go that extra 100 miles or more for anyone who requires aid. True story. I was Breaking Bad, not with meth, just my own silliness. That sometimes involves that... Sorry, I gotta start that again. I was Breaking Bad, not with meth, just my own silliness that sometimes involve cracking wise and loosening all ties that constrict and bind, when I finally came to the hard-fought realization that our inner children must be protected at all costs. And that includes not going back to school so soon because this virus has other ideas, and our children should not be led to slaughter because of politics and people's reigning ignorance. I hear Mimo, the creative director, off camera, and I am so delighted by all her happy sounds. And yes, the words she uses, already so powerfully like her mommy. her mother lioness. Roar. Jack's airliner, get on board and leave all your troubles behind, because it's time we reinvested in our dreams and stopped pretending. Because we're grown-ups, we could no longer have fun and laugh like we used to. This one's both for Jax and the creative director. Last few days have eluded me, but I'm going to give it a try now. I want to talk about Jax and the creative director and the beauty that still exists in our world. Leonard wasn't messing around when he wrote and sang, "That's how the light gets in." We cannot break beneath the pressure exerted by a greedy, gluttonous crowd that only takes for themselves and gives nothing to anyone else. Neoliberals and conservatives alike need to stop speaking in tongues and pretending their glad-handing actually amounts to anything more than more red tape. Because people don't forget, and people is what our world needs to always be about. I flipped a switch when I was 14 and accepted the sacrifice that comes when you answer the calling and you stop pandering to the death merchants and virus peddlers around every corner. Christ didn't call himself God, not even when he was backed into a corner and a crown of thorns was placed atop his unwashed head. I understand you're feeling feeble and are fed up with all the word salad being served up like manna from a very dispirited heaven. But without faith, we're going to stay bound and gagged for an eternity of hellfire furnace kisses. A crisis of conscience is just that, a crisis. But if you grab a shovel, you are sure to dig yourself out before you're paralyzed by a low self-esteem and the apathy that's forever nipping at our heels. I believe we've lost sight of what a perfect offering is. But that doesn't have to be the case. If we hang on just a little longer, as the doves of peace return home and shelter us in their grace. Last few days I felt as if words had turned their backs on me when actually it was the other way around, and all I needed to do was sit down in front of the keys and rediscover that rhythm in my fingertips and endless streams of undiluted consciousness. Jax and the creative director get it because they never give up, no matter how tough it gets. Because when it comes right down to it, we're all beasts of burden that need to take a holiday and start believing in ourselves again. Poetry Jerky. 3:09 a.m., listening to her voice, cadence, and the pitter-patter of her tongue doing Olympic-worthy gymnastics in her mouth temple. I don't believe in coincidences, and I don't think that's a coincidence. But what do I know when I'm just a word junkie in an action painting like my friend James Michael Shepard was? The Celestine Prophecy had its moments, as did Shirley MacLaine when she wasn't on another planet nursing her wounds. The New Age grew tiresome for me even before it got out of the gate, because it comes off so transparent, and I need more meat and potatoes on my unexcavated bones. It's been decades since I've let my guard down. And maybe, I need to work on that. Or maybe it's best I stay on high alert, because a mind or heart invasion can be just as intrusive and costly as a home invasion. Poetry jerky like goat can be tricky to locate. But once you've honed in on your prey, It's just like old home week. And who doesn't need more reggae in their life? When Jax goes freestyle, it reminds me of when I would improvise like a Jewish gangster hell-bent on world domination. Then I think about Dutch Schultz lying on that hospital bed all shot up, and some of his last words. A boy has never wept, nor dashed 1,000 kin. It breaks my heart how so many of us feel that we're unlovable. I'm now thinking about my own inner child, and his mouth smudged with Hershey's chocolate syrup, and how high fructose corn syrup will be the death of all of us if we're not careful. When I hugged my inner child for the first time, so many barriers broke apart, and I understood how important it is to forgive ourselves for whatever we may have done wrong. It's now 3:34 a.m., and my fingers are still looking for the words to catapult myself out of this ghetto in my mind I cannot seem to move past. Maybe me and Jax can continue to help one another find our way through the Snoopy dark as we own up to our faults and the Christmas star inspiring us to travel to Jerusalem. Just out of reach. In the dark, I cannot grasp the light. Words just out of reach. You're mercurial, like a cat or a hurricane. Secrets encase you in stone. I'm a poet, and so are you. We both made sacrifices. It's the covenant we made with God. You possess electricity, and it possesses you. The hellhounds on your trail resemble unicorns. I looked into your eyes and found Dante's Paradiso. In the light, I reinterpret the dark. Words smother me in kisses of oblivion. You're Quicksilver, like a first edition or crossword puzzle. Clues outline you in child's chalk. We're both human and supernatural. You know it, and I know it too. It's the bond we made when still in the womb. You ponder existence, and it ponders you. The angels in the architecture believe in you. You looked into my heart and found me just out of reach. Garden of Eden. I start a poem, or does a poem start me? I'm really not sure, but either way, it's all good. You're like a library I'll never check every book out of. Have you read Brodigan? If not, give me a call some night and I'll read to you from Watermelon Sugar, or So the Wind Won't Blow It All Away. It will change you as the words tear from the page like convulsions or abstract bullets. I was born in the Garden of Eden, under some rock or up a tree. You were always there, before God made Eve and Adam from dust. The serpent was an afterthought, and that's why evil is always chasing its obnoxious tail. Let's duck into the casino that has air conditioning and talk about our dreams and the nightmares that elude us right before waking up. I hold on to you like a bungee cord because I'm new to zip lining and all the adrenaline that goes into such an unbelievable waste of time. Never forget when I reached for the pomegranate and you gave me the stink eye, because you knew the fall was just around the next unexamined corner. you start a song, or does a song start you? Either way, you have that dark rhythm in your Brownsville soul. You're like a hardware store whose nuts and bolts have been baptized by Jesus. Have you ever looked up in the sky and read your prosperity in the clouds? If not, call me someday and I'll tell you your fortune like I used to when I was Jaspar, the telephone psychic. True story. It may not amount to much, but it'll be fun to lay out the tarot cards and show you a side of myself I haven't visited in quite some time. You were born in the Garden of Eden, in a flowing stream or in a dark cave. I was always there, even before God introduced shame to these absolute beginners. The serpent didn't know what hit him or her when the forbidden fruit was bitten into, and it was anyone's guess who would come out on top and what difference it would make anyhow. This last poem was actually not written for Jax specifically, but she had written a poem for me, and while I was writing this poem, I listened to her poem, and so she became a part of this poem. And I want to say that I feel like connections with people, real connections, I don't mean bullcrap connections, real connections, they don't seem to be happening as much. And I don't mean only because of the pandemic. I think part of it is social media. I really do. I think it's driven us further apart, and which is interesting. For instance, like email. Like when email happened, did we write letters anymore? So when I met Jax on Twitter, of all places, and the poetry just broke down. It just broke through the door. Very much like when I write poetry for Cat. Different energies, different people, different colors. Different muses. It means so much to me. To be able to break bread with this person online through the poetry and the art. The sharing of thoughts, hearts. It's magic. We are stardust. And we really do need to get ourselves back to the garden. This poem is entitled Critique. I wonder what it will take for someone to comment on one of my poems. There's a group of poets here in Cleveland, Ohio that I don't get along with, and I've had to accept that and move on. But what about all the other poets I've known since Columbus, or even before that? Where are all these people? And why do I feel like I'm all by myself and no one wants to invite me to their party or come to mine? Yes, I'm feeling sorry for myself. But there's nothing wrong with that from time to time, because branches have a tendency to break, especially when too much weight is placed on their outer limbs. Critiques are a dime a dozen, and those who burn hot are too often left out in the cold, as the fires of forgetfulness chastise you for being too full of yourself. Sometimes I want to crawl up inside my anal cavity and forget I ever signed up for this passion play. But then I remind myself, doing the work is the only way to make it through, and that this is even truer when the Tokyo, Montana Express has your name on it. He filled his gun with bullets and his belly with hamburgers. Then he checked out, because checking in wasn't getting him anywhere fast, and only made him feel sadder and more alone. I wonder what it will take for someone to pat me on the head and say, "Good dog, ruff, ruff." Of course, I don't really want that kind of faint praise, because bubbles like that always have a tendency to burst right at the most inopportune of moments. Isn't God nothing and no one? And isn't a crowned chakra just another crown of thorns? Resisting pregnant pauses like Sophie's Choice? I waited in the dark house for the creative director and you, because I knew I could fall into your arms when everything stopped making sense. My poetry is a dark horse that will never win the Kentucky Derby. And no, I don't smile when I read my poetry or at any other time, because when I was in elementary school and smiled one time for picture day, my mother traumatized me by making fun of that frozen, vomitous grin. I wonder if Jim was the last true counterpart I'll ever experience up close and personal. Our intensities, Jax, they joined forces, and like a wrecking ball, took no prisoners. As we demolished expectations and exposed fear for the little twat that it is. You have my heart, and I love you. I love you, Mimo. Let's keep working. Let's keep doing our chosen work. God bless you. God bless you.